Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. The personal finance world is full of different savings advice. Some people say to save 10% of your income. Other people say to save 15 or 20% or even 25% of your income. The major brokerage houses, they tend to land around 15%. Vanguard suggests 12 to 15%, while Fidelity advises 15% for investments and 5% towards short-term goals. With recommendations ranging from 10% all the way up to 25%, how do you know what's the right number? Finding that ideal number isn't always easy because it's about finding a balance between what allows you to enjoy life today, but also build a secure financial future. So I thought it might be fun to explore these options, to crunch the numbers and put them to the test and see which savings rate really allows you to retire comfortably. For instance, if we're talking about saving 10% of a $50,000 income, that's $5,000. But if we're talking about saving 25% of this income, that's $12,500. These are starkly different recommendations, and the higher your income goes, the greater the disparity gets when you look at these percentages. So which one of these commonly recommended amounts is the ideal savings rate? Well, I think it's fun to run a whole bunch of different scenarios and examples, so let's do just that and find out what this Goldilocks number might be. Let's set the stage with Franklin, who starts his career at the age of 25, earning $50,000. We'll assume that he gets pay increases every other year, totaling 3%. By the time he reaches the age of 65 and steps into retirement, his income would have been about $90,000. Let's run 4 different scenarios where Franklin saves 10%, 15%, 20%, and 25% of his gross income throughout his entire working career. We'll assume that his investments earn an 8% annual return. Let's see what these portfolios could grow to. If Franklin starts out with a $50,000 income, saving 10% of his income consistently throughout the course of his entire career, he will start off saving $5,000 a year. 40 years down the road, when his income is $90,306, he will be investing $9,030 per year. Looking at his investments over time, it takes him 12 years to hit $100,000 in investments, that first big milestone for many investors. By the time he retires, his investment portfolio will total $1.65 million. I think that's a really impressive portfolio. Let's run the exact same scenario, but looking at different savings rates. This time, the same exact income growth, Franklin saves 15% of his income over the course of his 40 years. In this case, it takes him just over 9 years to reach $100,000 in investments. And at the age of 65, he has an investment portfolio that totals $2.47 million. With a 20% savings rate over the course of 40 years, Franklin hits that $100,000 milestone in about 7.5 years' time. And by the time he retires, his investment portfolio totals about $3.3 million. And with a 25% savings rate over the course of 40 years, Franklin hits that $100,000 milestone in just over 6 years. And by the time he retires, his investment portfolio is a whopping $4 million. So obviously it comes as no surprise, the more Franklin saves, the bigger portfolio he ends up with long term. But it's not simply portfolio size that matters. What we should also look at is the income he can generate off these portfolios. So if we apply the 4% rule, the portfolio from the 10% savings rate would generate an income in retirement of about $66,000. The portfolio achieved through the 15% savings rate would provide an income of about $99,000 a year. The 20% savings rate portfolio would generate an income of about $132,000 per year, and the 25% savings rate portfolio would generate an annual income of about $165,000 a year. By the time he stepped into retirement at the age of 65 years old, Franklin was making about $90,000 a year, and that's before factoring taxes or any sort of savings rate. So if we consider a 10% savings rate and taxes, he was likely living on, say, $72,000 a year. So looking at the portfolios generated from these various savings rates, that 10% savings rate portfolio would just about cover it. And that's before factoring in anything like Social Security. So if we consider a safe rate of withdrawal and Social Security, Franklin would very much likely be able to maintain his same lifestyle or even a slightly elevated lifestyle off the 10% portfolio in retirement. But what if you prefer not to count Social Security and rather treat it as a bonus? You want to have a sustainable lifestyle simply from your investments. In that case, you want the 15% savings rate portfolio. That would give him an income of $99,000 a year, which was slightly more than what he was making before he stepped into retirement. So I think the 15% portfolio is the sweet spot, that 15% savings rate, because it builds in a little bit of a safety net. Now, does that mean if you're saving more than 15%, you're saving too much? And is 15% really the perfect number that you should be investing? Well, no, I think it's a great target, but as with everything in personal finance, and I think we know by this point, it depends. In this scenario, we have someone who started with the median income that steadily increased over the course of 40 years. That may not be your reality. Maybe you have an income that stalls or stagnates. If that's the case, well then the math changes. And what if you don't start saving at the age of 25? What if you wait until the age of 30? Well, you're likely to need to save more. The general rule, the earlier you start, the less you need to save. The later you start, the more you need to catch up. What if you're aiming to retire at 55 instead of 65? Well, then you're likely to need to save more, have a higher savings rate. What if you're planning on a delayed retirement? Well, then you can likely have a lesser savings rate. What if you're retiring with a pension? Well, this greatly reduces the needs of your investments. You can likely retire with a lesser investment portfolio and still have a great fully funded retirement because a reliable income stream means a lot once you step away from the workforce. If we look at it from this angle and consider the larger savings rates for Franklin, 20% and 25%. If Franklin's goal was simply to sustain his standard of living, have the same income from his investments as he was earning from his day job, aiming for a 100% replacement rate with a 20% income, he would achieve this after 35 years of saving and investing, meaning that Franklin would be able to retire at 60 instead of 65. Looking at a 25% savings rate, again, aiming for a 100% replacement rate, he would be able to retire after 32 years, so at the age of 57. Saving more opens up more opportunities, and I fully acknowledge that Franklin would likely be able to step away from the workforce sooner because these examples don't factor in taxes and they don't factor in his savings rate, which would have likely reduced the amount of money that he was living on. And as research shows, you tend to need far less than you expect in retirement, as I go over in this video. But I tend to get a lot of requests from viewers wanting a 100% replacement of gross income as they go into retirement, so I designed these examples to reflect that based on requests. There is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to a savings rate. Only the right rate for you and your lifestyle. And honestly, I'm not one who tends to recommend saving less. But I do believe in flexibility. I do believe that you can build a very strong portfolio and have a very successful retirement on different savings rates. And I think it's unlikely to assume that your savings rate will be static throughout the course of your entire life. It is likely to ebb and flow as your life evolves. The relationship between your savings rate and your years to retirement follows a non-linear inverse relationship. The more you save, the faster you will reach financial independence, but with diminishing returns at higher savings rates. If we operate under some key assumptions, like you have a consistent income and that you're able to achieve, say, 8% rate of return on your investments, we can make some broad statements. Let's say you have a savings rate of about 10%. For every 1% you're able to increase your savings rate, you would be able to shave off anywhere from 1 to 2 years towards your financial independence goal, so you can get there much quicker. Once you hit a savings rate of 20%, for every 1% you increase your savings rate, you're only reducing your timeline to financial independence by 1 year. Once you hit a savings rate of about 40%, you're only reducing your timeline to financial independence by half a year or less, so you reach a point of diminishing returns. So the effect of increasing your savings rate is strongest at lower savings rate and reaches a point of diminishing returns at higher savings rates. There are countless what-ifs in life, which is why it's crucial to find a savings rate that works for you. My 2 cents, go aggressive when you're young. Save as much as your income will allow. Sacrifices are much easier when you're in your 20s than they are when you're in your 30s and 40s and have a family to support. Life is unpredictable. You may need to take time off work or retire earlier than planned. That is why I like the idea of saving aggressively earlier in your career and building up that cushion. As your income and your investments grow, you can ease off the pressure mid-career if needed. It's far better to hit mid-career feeling ahead of the game rather than falling behind. So when in doubt, default to a higher savings rate so you can build up that cushion, because life is full of so many unknowns. My philosophy tends to be work when you can, save when you can, and enjoy the process along the way. And I say all of this knowing full well that at some points my savings rate exceeded 90%. That was a lot of sacrifice on a very modest income. Over time, I scaled it back to 70% and then 50% to where it sits today, which is about 30 to 40% of my income. And I know full well that this will change in the future, but right now, this is a savings rate that allows me to enjoy today while knowing that I'm putting something away for the future. What's your savings rate? Do you have an ideal number? Has that number changed over time? Share your thoughts in a comment down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye. Guys, I got 5% battery and we're just starting out. I got a backup battery. We good. With Recommend, I still got 5% battery. We're kicking it. Yeah. Okay. With Recommend, this is alarming. I just put in a new battery, brand new, came off the charger where it's been for probably 2 months and hasn't come off, and it's 17%. Oh gosh, I think I might need to buy new batteries. Let's see if we can power through. I got one more. It's on the same charger though, so I'm a little concerned. Okay, it's not just size that matters. It's income too. Listen, I'm just here for my own entertainment. That's really what your life should be. You should entertain yourself, and I succeed at that every single day. The age of 30, my battery just died, and it's flashing at me. I'm so nervous. I'm 65. Shh.